Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, whenever you find a way to watch or listen to this podcast. It's Omar from the Hardware. I'm back. Jackson and I will be back on pretty soon. But life's busy for both of us. But come football season, we'll be back in the swing of things. I'm back with a familiar face on the podcast, one we haven't had in a long time, and I'm just glad to be able to just talk to him again. We have Dan Steenkamer, uh, pretty much the man who has the pulse on Delaware Blue Hen Nation. And so, of course, we're talking about a Delaware topic. I'm not sure if you watched the podcast or listened to it before, you may kind of have an idea about like what kind of quirk we're talking about today. But Dan, I'm excited to just chop it up again.
My man, it's good to be back. Thank you so much for thinking of me. And yeah, great to catch up tonight as well as dig into. This is you and I, we're interested in a lot of the same stuff on the crazy, wonderful world of college athletics. And this is one of those Venn diagram overlaps, I think, for sure, talking about streaming and an FCS FBS matchup. So yeah, let's dive right in. Should be a good one.
Exactly, it should be good. And I mean, like, it's just funny how the more things change, the more they kind of stay the same. I mean, with like the streaming model being sort of cable in the 21st century, well, maybe not 21st century, but in the 2020s. And then just how, I guess maybe in 2005, an appearance on ABC was cool and all, but like nowadays, an appearance on network TV, ABC, CBS, or NBC is as good as gold, as we've seen with the Big Ten, pretty much aligning themselves with three of the four major networks for their television deal. Pretty much a groundbreaking deal, by all means. So I guess with that being said, Delaware fans are probably well aware a couple weeks ago during the big first 3 weeks of the season television schedule layout or announcement of times. Delaware fans, I guess. So that game, it's the second week of the season, right? Or is it the first or second week of the season? Oh, I think it's second because Penn State's playing West Virginia.
Yeah, week two for
Okay,
Delaware as
week two.
well. Yep, yep.
Okay, so with those announcements came mass announcements of whether it would be certain channel lineups, like CBS Sports Network released almost their whole schedule for the whole season, for the Mountain West and Conference USA. And then, of course, you had Michigan announcing the Big Ten Saturday night or the big Saturday night games along with their three Peacock exclusives. And among the three Peacock exclusives were, I guess you can say they're kind of throwaway games, like where you had it was of course a Delaware-Penn State, which we're going to talk about today. You had the surprise Washington-Michigan State on Peacock, which they instead chose Maryland Charlotte for the primetime game in that week, which I'm a huge fan of. But college football, casuals aren't a huge fan of. And I'm forgetting the third Peacock game, but oh yeah, I'm forgetting the third Peacock game. But I just know it was another like kind of paycheck throwaway game or conference game that doesn't matter. That really, I guess, won't have much implications. But on the Delaware Penn State game being a Peacock exclusive, like I said, you're the pulse of Blue Hens fans. What's kind of their thoughts? Are they just? I assume they're disgruntled from what I've seen from CAA Twitter just the past couple years.
Yeah, I do think that generally UD fans, as they're looking toward an FBS game on the schedule, when you think about typically in past years when Delaware's had an FBS opponent, and really in prior years for most FCS schools, when you play up, you expect to maybe find yourself on network TV. I'm not saying national TV or one of those three big main networks that the Big Ten is partnered with this season. But I'm saying CBS Sports Network, which broadcast Delaware's win over Navy last season, expect something like that. Maybe another kind of FS1, FS2 type situation. But instead, it will be streaming only for Delaware at Penn State. I do think Delaware fans are disappointed that they won't get an over the top linear experience to see their FBS game this season, in large part because many Delaware fans, if they're already college sports fans, they might be interested in already having ESPN Plus, and then that doesn't even include Delaware's regular season conference games, which of course are housed under Flow Sports umbrella of CAA content and live games. So Peacock, as far as the Delaware fans I know of, it hasn't necessarily gotten too much of a grip on the sports streaming sector yet. I mean, Peacock has streamed a wide variety of sporting events. Soccer, I know Major League Baseball's had Peacock mid-morning starts or noontime, early Sunday starts, which I've enjoyed the games that wrap up by 2 or 3 o'clock. Those are always good ones on the baseball side of things. But it's just Peacock. I don't know if folks necessarily always associate it with being a spot for sports. I mean, there are plenty of people who do. I'm just saying in the college sports scene, with Peacock, as NBC works with the Big Ten here, Peacock will kind of break more and more into streaming college sports with more frequency. So when it comes to the University of Delaware, I don't think there's an expectation that the fans have that Peacock will be um, have the same quality concerns as in-house school broadcasts of Flow Sports games. Like when institutions produce Flow Sports broadcasts, it's going to vary wildly. The resources that they've given host institution are what you're going to get. But with Peacock, you're still getting the folks from NBC who are putting their resources and energy into a streaming product. So it's not a matter of quality or anything like that necessarily, but there is a consideration of, hey, there are only so many dollars we can afford to spend on streaming. Any given household, any given individual, member of a family or a whole family trying to put dollars together to figure out what are we going to stream. Disney Plus, Hulu, ESPN Plus. That's usually one package, but there's only so many dollars that can go around, and so I know plenty of Delaware fans are disappointed that in reality, if you want to see every single one of Delaware's games this season, you're going to have to find a way to get a Peacock subscription, because I don't believe the game's going to be available without subscription. I know over the years Peacock has had different, like I've had a Peacock account in the past, and I believe I still do under a free, not a trial, but just a free version of it, just that they were offering at the time I signed up. And I may have been able to access a Major League Baseball game or two, but it's all changing over time. If I'm understanding it correctly right now, this will be something you'll need a subscription for as we get into the new fiscal year and the new football season. So long answer, but in the end, for all those reasons, it's a new streaming site for many Delaware fans to visit. They've been aware of it, I'm sure, but now it's the new reality of, just because you're playing an FBS school and just because you're playing what I think is going to be top 10 college football playoff contender in Penn State, just because you're doing all that doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get the benefit of an ESPNU or CBS Sports Network or FS1.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with your points there. So my one thing is this is like with Delaware fans, I mean, of course, you're around them all the time. Uh, do they strike you as more all-around sports fans? Because I mean, Peacock has some appeal as I
Yeah.
guess a good deal for all-around sports fans. Because I mean, like say like if they were to subscribe for like the 1 month just to see Penn State, Delaware, you get I guess the final games in the home stretch of the Sunday leadoff games for NBC.
Yeah.
Um, and then Premier League too. But I mean, like, do you think Delaware fans will care? I guess care so much about seeing their team that they're just will fixate
Well,
on Peacock.
I think of the profile of the Delaware fan is really, there are plenty of fans who subscribe to the Philadelphia teams. It's the greater Philadelphia area, and also in a way the greater Baltimore area. I mean, I often think of myself as being situated about halfway between those two, and I just don't know. The University of Delaware, hardcore fan who's thinking about tracking down Peacock and considering the pros and cons of Peacock for the Penn State game. I mean, a UD fan's a college sports fan, and most college sports fans are more comfortable on ESPN Plus, where you can kind of justify your purchase with, well, there's such a bevy of inventory, right? Like there's such a bevy of inventory. I can dance around multiple games very conveniently all in one place. And so I think for that reason, especially, that's why Peacock just isn't the same. It doesn't have the same grip on the college sports streaming inventory economy at this point. So I just think that the value proposition is there as a general matter across the world of sports outside of the college realm for Peacock. But I don't consider Delaware Blue Hen fans too different than other college sports fans who their security blanket is definitely ESPN Plus. And in the case of Delaware fans, their necessity blanket is not a security blanket, and the necessity blanket is Flow Sports, and which already comes at a price. So I think that's what it really boils down to. I'll be interested more so in first time users, Delaware fans who need to use Peacock to take a look at this Penn State game. Will there be renewals from that? Will folks kind of be intrigued by the product, because it may be many folks first time with it, or first time since a free trial, months or years ago. So when NBC years ago, I was tweeting about this actually when the Delaware and Penn State game got on the books for noon and not 3:30, because you'll never believe me, when I saw the 3:30 p.m. initial kickoff announcement, I was shocked that it wasn't a noon game. Not that it would be big noon Saturday or anything, just like typically an FCS FBS game is pretty regional. Schools are relatively close. You might think about a noon start. So they wind up being noon. And after I saw that announcement, I did some research and tracked down, I think Delaware's last game that was nationally available, as the Peacock availability will be national, of course. The last NBC platform nationally available Delaware game was likely in 2015 when the Hens hosted William and Mary on NBC Sports Network. So I bring that up to say NBC Sports Network doesn't exist anymore. And part of the reason it doesn't exist anymore is because of NBC's or Comcast's, however you want to label it. It's concerted effort to put resources into getting sports streaming on Peacock, the newest platform. So in a way, it's kind of funny to think about. Everything comes full circle. The CAA had an agreement with NBC Sports Network years ago to get a certain number of CAA football games on a linear television nationally. And now Delaware will be on an NBC platform nationally, but just through streaming, direct to consumer. So it's something that's been perceived, I think, it's a Delaware fan base that it's an older fan base, very dedicated. It does skew a bit older, I think, than the general streaming demographic, but folks have adjusted over time, and Flow Sports has been in place with the CAA since I think right before the pandemic. So it's a fan base that it can navigate the Peacock with no trouble. But at the same time, yeah, to get around to the main point, I'm more interested in seeing if first-time Peacock users will stick with it and see some of the Big Ten content throughout the rest of the college football season, because of course that's why Peacock's there, right? Big Ten, Penn State versus Delaware, and certainly I don't know how many FCS games or FCS teams have been involved on Peacock so far. So Delaware will have one of those first few distinctions, I'd say, in 2023.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting you say that about like I guess how many FCS teams are involved, and I'm just interested. Like this is, I guess, in the future. The Atlantic 10, of course, has a deal. I think they're the only conference before the Big Ten that had a deal with NBC. So I'm interested to see. I do think most of their games will get sent to Peacock. I mean, most of their, I guess, most of their 35 game slate on across NBC sports platforms. Most of it was across USA Network.
Right,
Well, actually, yeah, all but a couple games, with the couple being put on the NBC Sports app before like
right,
the advent of Peacock. So most of those games were on USA Network. I mean, those that watch USFL, for me, a big
yeah,
USFL guy. The USA games or the USFL are simulcast on Peacock, but I just don't think the Atlantic 10, as much as I love the Atlantic 10 as a conference, I really do. Went to a couple Fordham games at Rose Hill Gym, in
mm-hmm.
college and everything, but I just don't think it's enough to, care to, I guess, satisfy the, I guess, hunger for
Mm-hmm.
that college sports fans have. Even if it's just $5 per month, which like the price I'm gonna get into a little bit later on, but I think that's a very good point too. Um, so I guess onto the price though. So Peacock's about $5 a month. I mean, right now, like it's the cost of it's like $5 to watch one home game, and it's a monthly cost compared to you're paying the bulk for Flow Sports. I think it's like 29.99 per month. Um, I guess just for all the CA, I guess every other Delaware game, with the exception of maybe like I don't know if they play any like Patriot League or like Ivy League schools like on the road, but I assume like every other like game is a Flow Sports own game.
Yeah. The non-conference wise, St. Francis from the NEC comes to Delaware Stadium, and Duquesne, also from the NEC, comes to Newark. So there'll be home games that'll be on Flow Sports as well for Delaware.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean about $30, $30 per month. I guess I guess not contribution, but commitment. So let's see. In the long run, football season lasts from like September all the way to I guess the FCS season to November. So 3 months, about $90 for $10 a game. So I guess the per game rate ends up being less for Delaware fans with the Peacock game. Excuse me, on the Penn State game on Peacock compared to the per game rate, the I guess the approximate per game rate on Flow Sports. But I guess I want to ask you this: like, do you think this game is better off now that it is on Peacock compared to the Big Ten Network? Because looking at the price of cable, the ship has sailed on cable for the most part. I don't need to tell anyone listening to this podcast that, but for streaming options for the Big Ten Network, the cheapest one that I could find was Sling TV, which either the blue or orange package, whichever one carries, it's $30 per month. And then of course you combine the two, it's $45 a month. And then like some of these prices for the other streaming services, it is cable again, just without a long-term contract. So you can cut it off when you want. That's the only benefit of it, because you're paying $71, $72 a month for YouTube TV, $65 a month for Hulu live TV, which both have the Big Ten network. So I guess I guess I'm gonna play the devil's advocate and say it's better off that this one-off game is on Peacock compared to the other streamers because of how difficult it is to get the Big Ten, because the Big Ten doesn't have a direct consumer option.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I follow your argument there. I think if you're in the camp as a Delaware fan who does not currently have access to the Big Ten network, whether it's your cable provider, if you're on cable, your cable provider doesn't provide it, which I guess is more of it has been more of an issue for folks looking for the Pac-12 network, because the Pac-12 network I know has had carriage issues over time with different cable providers, but yeah. So if you don't happen to have the Big Ten network for that reason, or you don't have a streaming service that currently includes the Big Ten network in your bundle, the Big Ten network, your path to it, they're right. There isn't a standalone path to the Big Ten network the way you can go directly to Peacock and get, if you're one and done with Peacock for one game with Delaware-Penn State, yes, it probably will be more efficient for you dollars and cents wise. So I totally see that. So in that sense, is maybe there's the glass half full comparison for Delaware fans. You don't necessarily, not all is lost. It could be a bit worse if you were on the Big Ten network, because I guess. And this is a question I would have, because I haven't seen as many Big Ten games. You may have had more experience streaming Big Ten games in years prior to this one. Was there a way to get to the Big Ten network through like the Fox Sports Go app? Because I know the Big Ten network and Fox are tied. But I wasn't sure if the Fox Sports overall package of streaming options included access to BTN at all.
Yeah, so I think so Fox Sports Go, I believe, I think you need to authenticate no matter what with whatever
Okay.
subscriber you
Yeah.
have. So I don't think it's like a Peacock type option. I think I
Good
read something
point.
too about Fox's dependence on traditional TV, how it's kind of paid off for them.
Good point.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean, you have to
Right.
authenticate
So
anyway.
even if you're authenticating in Fox Sports Go, that requires you're authentic with some streaming provider or some cable provider, right? So that's an important clarification. Yep, gotcha.
Yeah, so yeah. I mean, yeah, I think while it's not the best situation, I think there is kind of a glass like half full perspective, like you said, you can look for. But it's like it's also like too, it's like the games that are also part of the Peacock package. Because it just occurred to me like the third game that was part of the Peacock package wasn't a Big Ten game. It was a Notre Dame game against Central Michigan. Which the Peacock game has always been a throwaway game. It's kind of like I think it's kind of interesting because instead of putting a marquee game on Peacock to to really force people's hand to subscribe to Peacock, I guess, for Notre Dame's television package, they opt for the safer game, the Central Michigan game, which is interesting because back in 2015, the first I think it was either the first or the second game broadcast on NBCSN, the first Notre Dame in terms of Notre Dame games broadcast on NBCSN, it was the 2015 Shamrock Series when Notre Dame came in at number 4 in the playoff rankings, playing the first football game in Fenway in 49 years. And at the time, like my family didn't have cable, so like I thought this was an abomination, honestly, that a game of this magnitude would be put on that. But it could have forced a family in better circumstances than mine at the time to get link with their local cable provider and get cable just for that. That's just something that's interesting to me. Like we always come back to, I guess, Delaware fans as college football fans at large, and I just don't think there's another game on the Peacock slate, excuse me, that will, I guess, force them to subscribe really, because there's only 3 games all year. This one, the Notre Dame game, and Washington, Michigan State, which Washington, Michigan State maybe, but that one is during the same month as, I mean, it's during the same month as the Delaware-Penn State game. So what reason do Delaware fans have to subscribe in the long term to this?
These are the questions. These are the questions we're left asking here. I mean, it's interesting. Like I gradually in future seasons, looking at the bigger picture, NBC's future relationship with the Big Ten, how many more, how yeah, as it wades its feet deeper and deeper in the water, how many more Big Ten games? Like I'm not even talking about FCS versus FBS, but just Big Ten on Big Ten. How many of those conference games will wind up exclusively on the streaming side? Because the league isn't necessarily diving headfirst with this in its partnership with NBC, but certainly NBC would like to make Peacock, very competitive and viable in competing for college sports eyeballs. And I mean, it was expensive to get the Big Ten on board, right? So NBC wants to capitalize on that, and yeah, they're gonna do well with the Big Ten Saturday night games. I'm sure of that, but yeah, I do think it seems like we're headed towards, more and more of emphasis on Peacock, especially since, like, just looking at the Penn State game hosting West Virginia, that's on that's advertised as being on NBC and Peacock starting at 7:30 Eastern. So like similarly to Sunday night football, I think Sunday night football, right, over, or if not Sunday night football on the NFL side, at least the NBC playoff game, right, was that also on Peacock? Was that also on Peacock too? Like they were kind of saying, hey, by the
Was.
way, you can also catch it over here, just so you know. Don't forget about us when you're on the go if you need to stream.
Yeah, so I think it was, but I've heard that it was all on the free version of the app.
Mm,
And also turns out there was one more game I didn't mention. East Carolina versus Michigan is the first Peacock exclusive at noon on opening on Labor Day weekend. So, but again, I just don't think that game has much of a draw. East Carolina is a good program. They improved significantly under Mike London. But will they put up a fight against Michigan? Is that to me, that strikes me as a game that Michigan fans can do without. So, I mean, but again, I think it just goes into promotional, um, I guess how NBC promotes it, because NBC's been promoting the heck out of Big Saturday Night. It's all I see on the
mhm.
the USFL games. It's June, or it was May. It's been since May, and like they're already talking about Big Saturday Night. So they can just do that with Peacock too. I mean, put their promotional powers behind, especially with Michigan too. Which, I mean, it's interesting because Michigan is back. I think Michigan's at their best height since the I think the Bo Schembechler days, because all due respect to Lloyd Carr wasn't as much a character or a not even, I guess, not even polarizing, but just a guess how can I put it? He's not, but just a well known and kind of a interesting figure as Jim Harbaugh. So maybe that pulls in some some Delaware fans that are college football fans, but like that again, like no one's circling the calendar for East Carolina, Michigan. But yeah, like I mean, yeah, I agree again with everything you said. I mean,
Good that you didn't forget about ECU though. Mike Houston, that's a name Delaware fans, FCS fans
shoot,
should
not
know.
Mike
Former
London, Mike Houston. Yep.
Mike Houston, former head coach of James Madison. Yeah, I mean, Mike London's it's not a bad thing. His name is on your mind because Mike London's doing good work at William and Mary too. So why not shout him out too? As long as we're talking about a CAA school playing at Penn State. Yeah, Mike London, big ups to Mike London as well. But yeah, your full lineup: ECU, Michigan for the exclusive on Peacock, and then a week later Delaware-Penn State, which was our primary topic. The P5 combination that is Big Ten involved, but it's non-conference for the Big Ten with Michigan State, yeah, hosting Washington there to round out, and all those games in September, as you've been alluding to. So I'm interested to see how it looks, just how much it reminds me in terms of the game presentation, how much. Now, again, there has been Notre Dame football on NBC for many years, but like it's been a bit since NBC Sports Network was around and was providing coverage of FCS teams involved in different games. So I just seeing the game presentation and all the formatting it'll be cool. It'll be cool to catch how things are laid out by the folks at NBC, because this is something they're definitely going to lean into. NBC Sports adding this much more complete roundup of college football to its portfolio. Sunday Night Football already a huge hit, of course, but the parallel, the Big Ten being a coast to coast conference and playing Saturday nights before you get Sunday nights on, like it. I mean, it's something a trend you've seen too, I'm sure, and it all kind of makes sense for what the NBC is looking to go for. And Delaware-Penn State being on Peacock, it just so happens to be a neat little part of that. So it'll be cool. It'll be cool for at least for maybe existing Peacock subscribers, and we'll see how many folks in the 302 within Delaware, how many folks jump on for the game in September.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So, like, I mean, I was doing some research just now on the Peacock playoff game, because it turns out I guess you do have to subscribe to Peacock for the playoff game, and the same thing too with the. Honestly, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the young quarterbacks in the NFL with the Josh Allen versus Justin Herbert Saturday night football game on December 23rd. You have to subscribe to Peacock for that one too. But they do know in the Yahoo Sports article that I'm reading that that fans and markets of the two teams playing the playoff game will be able to watch the Peacock stream on their local stations. Kind of the same thing with the Amazon Prime streams that they were doing. I think it's just an NFL rule. So I wonder too. I wonder if Delaware, if stations in Delaware and in Penn State's alumni, I guess maybe that would be the Philadelphia area, would be willing to do that. Maybe like a CW or like I guess none of the major networks, but more like a CW or I guess like a some My TV. I guess yeah, My TV network would be willing to do such a thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is interesting to think about. I wonder if that would be permitted in this setup. Like, it could be that the Peacock exclusive as far as college football in 2023, and more specifically Big Ten in 2023. Like, if it really means exclusive, it's going to be exclusive. Like, it's going to be only they're going to want to keep it to the confines of the streaming end on Peacock. But I could see that. I mean, it would be certainly a bit more convenient for some segments of Delaware's fan base to be able to turn on NBC 10 Philadelphia, which is the NBC linear affiliate, for the Philadelphia market, and get Delaware-Penn State. That would be very, very popular in this area. But at the same time, could there be, like a Me TV or the CW pickup of it? I guess they were permitted contractually, but I'm not so sure. I get it. We have to get into the weeds of the of the agreement, which I'm sure the weeds of the agreement I'm sure are very vast and expansive, considering that the Big Ten and Penn State and Delaware by extension were all able to share an announcement of the kickoff time among all these games. Delaware-Penn State will start at 3:30, and then for later that same day for the announcement to come out. Actually, NBC and Peacock raised its collective hand and said we'd like to move it up to noon. Like, the fact that there was a move up, like, didn't you already have the ability to move it up? Like, wasn't this discussed? Like, not totally sure where that came from, but that gives you a sense of the latitude that Peacock has in the agreement. I'm sure the agreement is very lengthy, well written by all the lawyers, but that's just kind of one funny example. Like, hey, the official announcement came, the press release was all freshly hot off the presses, literally, and then you learn, oh wait, the very people who are supposedly dictating all this in the first place, the TV crew in charge, says actually we need to change. So it goes to show you that I'm sure it's a voluminous contract between NBC as part of this bigger picture with Big Ten. So I'm sure that it's very explicit about whether or not you can finagle even like a small regional linear component for Peacock game.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, we'll see. I mean, this is all the first time we're really experiencing this. So I mean, whatever happens, I mean, we'll all learn in real time at the same time. So I guess one final thing I want to talk about. It's been so long that was not able to talk about the CBS I guess the new CAA media deal, which they said was I think I'm gonna embarrass myself, but I think it's an eight-figure. I think they said it was an eight-figure contract because I'm a history guy, not great with numbers. I couldn't, I didn't realize, didn't know off the top of my head how many digits were 10 million, but an eight-figure contract, which doing the math, which I think it would be on the low end of the eight-figure, more like on the low tens. So about 10 million for, I think, I'm not sure how many full members. Are there 12 full members of the CAA now, or is it 14 now?
Well, so the number I've had in my head lately is there will be 15 football playing schools once Campbell and North Carolina A&T come on for football July 1st. Well, Campbell will come on for all sports on July 1st, just to be clear. And North Carolina A&T, what was in the CAA this past academic year for non-football sports. So in terms of football schools, keeping it all straight, A&T gets football in with the rest of its athletic department in the CAA on July 1st. Campbell on that same day of this year gets football in all its sports. So with that, you get to the 15 number. If my back of the napkin math is right, we're at 15 because it is a little bit dizzying over the years what we've gotten to in the CAA, but that's the number they're sitting at.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess at the very ceiling, I can see 1 million per school for the CAA, but even then, that's kind of a stretch for me because I think they were paid like below 500,000, and I think that's a high estimate because I don't have the figures with me right at the very moment. But I guess your thoughts on them re-upping with Flow Sports, and then CBS Sports Network, which they're getting more appearances on CBS Sports Network, which is great. But notably, none of those appearances are for football. So I just want to know your thoughts on the contract.
Yeah, your caveat there at the end is spot on. The expansion of the partnership with CBS Sports Network as far as linear national TV opportunities for the CAA. That's all in terms of CAA basketball, men's and women's. Actually, the women's basketball championship game winds up on CBS Sports Network now with this agreement, which was a great thing. The men's tournament, semifinals, and final had been on CBS Sports Network in the last several years. And to get the women's tournament involved in that CBS SN experience as well and get the championship game of that bracket on, I'm a big fan of that and just one of my gut reactions to it. But the CBS Sports Network expansion on the basketball side was a big key in this. I spoke with the league AD prior to the completion of these media rights negotiations. It was during basketball season. I talked with this athletic director, and he told me, in pretty clear terms, that the existing partnership that the CAA had with CBS Sports for its national TV exposure for basketball, that was a big deal, and that was something that was certainly valued and was going to be a factor in moving forward, is what I understood. And so that come to find out that was the case. The CAA uses its Flow Sports agreement is my inference to help guarantee its CBS Sports Network appearances. I mean, the 8-figure agreement with Flow Sports for the exclusive digital rights, that's listed as, in the press release, the most lucrative media rights deal in league history. So the CAA, I don't think, was getting that offer from ESPN. I doubt ESPN. I'm not somebody who's talked to the consulting group that negotiated this deal, and I haven't talked to all league presidents or anything like that. But my educated thought is I highly doubt ESPN would have come to the table with a multimedia rights offer that would match this record agreement that Flow Sports was able to provide. So the CAA member schools look out for themselves as far as the distributions they're going to get through this re-up with Flow Sports. It's a good, as far as mid-major conferences striking a deal, the market, it's a winner. It's a winner economically, but there still is the Flow Sports functions so similarly to ESPN Plus, it's hard to say Flow Sports is worse than ESPN Plus. Well, what does that really mean? Because both operate as, in terms of just distributing, many times, or vast majority of the times, as it's school produced broadcast, and the quality of the school's production is, although there are supposed to be, limits and expectations right into the contract with streaming providers about the quality of what they're going to put out, expectations for equipment quality at schools, all of those things. It ultimately boils down to the streaming quality is what you're going to get varies from school to school. We said that at the beginning of the podcast. So Flow Sports and ESPN Plus function very similarly in that way. They're just the distributors of what's being produced at the host institutions. But Flow Sports has a massive brand problem. And the brand problem is one that the rollout with the CAA folks, I think from time to time have had trouble locating the CAAs. There, at least at one time, and this may still be in effect now, there was a special CAA price that you could get if you went through the CAA's advertisements of the Flow Sports partnership. You could pick up whether it was a monthly or yearly rate that was a little bit different than the original rack rate, but this was several years ago. I don't know if it's changed, but at the outset, that was available to some CAA fans. Is that if you had the link, if you had the right link, you get an improved deal on Flow Sports. But I don't know if everybody had a great awareness of that, and then it was just a difficult transition, I think, for most of the conference's fans. One of the most popular fan bases, JMU, was pretty vocally opposed to it due to the perception of, hey, perception is reality in college sports. Brand is everything. Our brand being on Flow Sports with the rest of the CAA, well, that means our conference and our brand isn't right up next against the other guys on ESPN Plus family of options. So if Flow Sports is never going to be ESPN Plus in terms of college athletic, fan exposure. At the same time, Flow Sports was always going to be able to outbid ESPN for the CAA because from ESPN's perspective, do you really necessarily need to add that inventory? I mean, the CAA is expanding. There are more and more teams joining it, right, at this time. And so there's inventory. There's great diversity of teams. You have HBCUs. You have teams they're really rising as schools in the South. Campbell is really strong in baseball, and so it provides some sport strength diversity. The CAA goes all the way up to Boston with Northeastern as far as a non-football school goes. So there's stuff to offer there to an overall inventory of streaming college sports, but ESPN didn't have to bend over backwards for the CAA. So I don't know that was necessarily stunning to folks that the CAA went for an agreement with Flow Sports, but at the same time, the perception is so much different. Like it is going to be a hard sell for the CAA to really say to its fans, hey, like stick with us, simply because it's a costly price. When you're paying to subscribe to Flow Sports, there are Big East Olympic sports available. Their women's basketball is a frequent appearance on the Big East, on the Big East digital side through Flow Sports. But beyond that, it's largely Division II conferences partnered with Flow Sports. So CAA fans who are subscribing to Flow Sports, you're paying not an outsized rate necessarily, but it's a strong commitment financially to access the whole portfolio of CAA streaming options. I mean, among Division I leagues, maybe the Summit League could consider Flow Sports as its next multimedia rights partner. Matt Brown, Extra Points newsletter, does a great job with that. He'd been reporting that not too long ago that the Summit League is seriously considering going with Flow Sports. or some other non-ESPN partner for MMR. But outside of that, the CAA has been on a bit of a D1 island when it comes to football, and the Summit League wouldn't fix that either. You know that no football in the Summit, at least not right now. So see, that's a long way of saying CAA football fans, as they see the upgrade of Flow Sports, or not the upgrade, but the renewal of the deal, the schools that they're fans of will benefit because the distributions are there. Like that money wasn't coming from ESPN. I really don't think, but it's I think fans do feel a little bit that they weren't heard. Like at some point it's nice to be on CBS Sports Network frequently and to compete with the other mid-major leagues in the region on basketball wise, and have that access to CBSSN. But football in the football sense, the FCS is so not controlled, but the Missouri Valley and Big Sky are so reliably on ESPN Plus that when CAA fans want to really make that reliable claim to being in the top 3 conferences, national FCS fans don't always get the chance to see those games right side by side. ESPN Plus Valley game, ESPN Plus Big Sky game, and you're going over to a whole other website and a whole other bill and a whole other credit card bill to get to Flow Sports. So that's something that gets discussed time and time again, and we're going to keep talking about it because of this renewal that made fiscal sense, but at the same time, it's one of the great contrasts between what presidents and ADs are looking for and valuing, and maybe the way they're constrained, and they can't always listen to the constituents. Like the fans are the consumers, but at the same time, the consumers don't drive the bus here as much, right? Like it's a strange economic layout. Like the fans weren't subjugated here, but they weren't also heeded totally, because the fan outpouring about Flow Sports, whether it's perfectly rational or not, like it's a combination of the two, it was not listened to this time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I think the key thing in all this is consolidation. I mean, as we go forward into the streaming era of sports, Flow Sports, the quality or whatnot, or the I guess availability, it's available to anyone, really anyone that has internet, it's available. But in terms of convenience and price, I mean, you can get the Hulu bundle for I think it's like for $15 less. Let's see, 13.99. So for $16 less, then you can get Flow Sports for. And I mean, that's just more bang for your buck. Even if ESPN Plus was the same price, you get much more value out of your buck for ESPN Plus. So many more conferences. Like pretty much every Group of 5 conference, except for the Mountain West. You get Power 5 access. You get the Big 12. The Big 12 has, they get some games on ESPN Plus as well. And then Flow Sports you mentioned. I mean, if you love college sports in general, it's a good deal. I didn't even know D2 schools were part of it, or I didn't even know the Big East had Olympic sports airing on that. But I guess it makes sense just with Fox's, I mean, I guess oversaturation of content now. But again, the price is more and it's not consolidated with everything else, which is why CBS Sports Network, I mean, they have long been trailing ESPN, Fox Sports One, and whatnot. I don't like. I think it was just like until recently they got Nielsen ratings and viewership ratings because their carriage numbers are so low. But they're consolidated with all those cable networks, ESPN, the FS1s and 2s, the conference networks. So it's a big deal when you connect with them because they're consolidated with the content that people do want to see. So when you stumble on random, I don't know what nights the CAA plays their basketball games, but I'll say a random Tuesday night and you see an exciting game in CAA on CBS Sports Network, it's great for the conference because you had the opportunity to without paying an extra $30 a month, to see it. I mean, so that's
Yeah,
that's just a huge thing.
totally.
Yeah, that's the
You're
thing.
close. You're close. It's Thursday night. That's the only thing I would say. Thursday night for CAA men's hoops, anyway. Yeah, but you're right. The point stands regardless of that nitpick. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, like I mean, I'm not a huge college basketball guy. I try every time, but I mean, shoot, I just get home late from work and working out that it's just like the only conference I can catch at this point are like the WCC because I cut off my YouTube TV subscription from basketball season. So, but yeah, so we'll just see how this I guess the CAA carries on going forward. I think they're in a good spot. Well, I don't know. I think they're right now they're kind of stable, but I just kind of see a Big East type of breakout, honestly, or breakup. But there's just so much moving pieces with the conference, that
Yeah.
we'll see what happens in the coming years.
it,
So
it's it, it feels a little bit bloated, but it also makes sense what the CEA is doing in terms of can you blame them for enlarging, I guess, in a way when you're able to, right? Because conference realignment, I said it on actually the FCS Football Talk podcast. I just joined with my buddy Sam Herder at Hero Sports the other day. The conference realignment wave that we follow, it's really a matter of a pecking order a lot of times. The CAA has been exerting its place as ahead of the pecking order, or ahead of the Big South in that pecking order, right? Plucking from the Big South, getting Monmouth football from the Big South anyway, getting Hampton from the Big South, and now getting A&T Campbell from the Big South. Like the have-nots issue is there. Like if the CAA is in a position to exert that power, in some ways hard to blame it, but it's also, man, 15 football playing schools. You're going to have, I guess it comes out to 5 pods of 3 teams that will play each other, protected. You call it, I guess you call it not protected rivals necessarily, but protected regional opponents. Like one of them is Delaware, Villanova, Towson. They all play each other. Now, Delaware and Villanova play each other annually as a rivalry, but Delaware and Towson was almost every year. Now that Delaware-Towson becomes every single year, because you get Delaware, Towson, Nova, just as an example of 3 out of 15 who will play each other every football regular season in this layout. 15 makes sense that way. Like you can make it practically make sense with those groupings. It's not divisions, but it is groupings for annual games. But gosh, yeah, could there be some kind of breakup? I'm not saying it's gonna be a wholesale breakup, but could you lose a piece or two? Like is the CAA planning on losing or trying to protect itself against losing a piece or two by going to this number of teams for football? I guess it's a possibility. The CAA didn't exactly go bat for 1,000 in realignment in this cycle. If you read, I believe there have been reports, and if not fully substantiated reports, there have been regular rumors about maybe the CAA was looking at several SoCon schools before it wound up with a program like Campbell most recently. I reported about the CAA thinking it had Howard under wraps to come to join the conference, and then that fell apart on Howard's end. So there's speculation about maybe Hampton was invited to the CAA with the full expectation that Howard would join along, and then that fell apart. So the CAA hasn't exactly been batting 1,000 either. So maybe it's had to go to some plans B and C, but it still winds up at the same very large number. So yeah, I just wanted to expand on that a little bit because it's an interesting topic. The fact that they're at this number and it's practically able to be done, but is it a sign of, is there more movement to come down the line? We'll see, because of course everybody's at the mercy of what happens all the way up to the Pac-12 TV deal, right? So we're kind of holding our breath when we're discussing the CAA, but it's fun to break down and try to discern what might come next.
Yeah, for me, like my closing comment on the CAA is like, I just think that there's so many football only members a part of CAA football that, have, I wouldn't say they have much to lose, but have much to gain with a geographic consolidation. And I'm talking about the New Hampshires, the Maines, and whatnot that, I guess are seeing their regional rivals not disappear but played less frequently. Like you said, I guess Delaware, I mean, New Hampshire is not a protected rival. Maine's not a protected rival. And those are rivalries that stretch back years and decades to the Yankee Conference, and everything. So, seeing historic matchups like that, not exactly rivalries, but I mean, in a sense, they are rivalries. Seeing games like those this year, even Rhode Island too, Rhode Island as well. And they're seeing like the precarious situation that a lot of that other Northeast schools are in at the time, that they can kind of, link with these schools, like a Robert Morris, like a Bryant as well, which I mean I wrote about earlier in the spring. Shameless plug. But that's just my opinion,
Yeah,
it's just
not
like it's
shameless at
kind
all.
yeah, it's just kind of like, it just reminds you of the Big East, honestly, where it's just like too much, like there's just a lack of identity crisis, because it's like the CAA, I see, like, do you want to be the SoCon, or do you want to be what's left of the Atlantic 10 when they're a football conference, or the Yankee conference? So that's just my opinion on it. I think I'm not going to go on a hot take and say that something big will happen in the next couple of years, but I do see discontent kind of breeding with their members.
Yeah, Matt Brown wrote about it too, maybe like summer 2020. One of my first Matt Brown pieces, and I plug his name because he does a great job. Talk about the business of reporting in college sports, business side of the college sports world. It might have been summer 2020, a story he put out about, hey, like one of the things about the CAA that makes it one of the great like reality shows to track in college sports and college football is the football only schools. Like looking at New Hampshire, not to say just bringing up New Hampshire, UNH certainly values the ability to play Richmond and Delaware and Villanova. And I said William Mary. Yeah. So a number of those like household CAA names, like UNH as a proud football tradition, and I'm sure UNH wants to continue to be associated with those schools rather than UNH winding up in a lumping with Bryant and Bobby Moe like that. UNH, I think UNH is dedicated to CAA football, but there's so many other comedy, like UNH isn't an A10 school, but for those A10 schools like Rhodey and Richmond, basketball is a bigger thing at play, right? And for UNH, I guess forget basketball, hockey's in play for UNH as well. So it's the CAA great collection. Great is one adjective for it to have a great collection or amalgamation of various schools.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I mean, it's just interesting too because you look at Maine. I feel bad. I feel the worst for Maine when it comes from a football perspective because their travel is just not really beneficial. I mean, they're kind of on an island. I mean, New Hampshire's close by, of course, being in New England, but I mean, Rhode Island too. But even then, like, Orono is not exactly like too close to Boston. It's not exactly too close. It's not exactly southern Maine. So that's just my thing as well. I mean, like you said, the A10 schools were like basketball drives thing where it's like they do stand, like they stand to loot to gain. I mean, yeah, they stand to gain something from a geographic consolidation of football with the media deal that the A10 gets from even though I haven't been able to get numbers on it, I do think that they do get paid more than the CAA because they get more units from the tournament, they get more at-large bids, they have bigger brands, just through I mean, whether it's Davidson, even it's not even just the traditional A10 schools that are bigger brands. I know this is a tangent, but it's just like, Davidson, a newer A10 school is a brand. You also have your VCU as well. So I don't know. We'll see in the coming years, but I just don't think that the CAA right now is a union that can last like even the next realignment wave like that, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, we started talking about Delaware-Penn State. Delaware is an ambitious program. There isn't a viable pathway to the FBS for Delaware at this point, but Delaware's investing a lot in athletics, investing a lot in facilities. Delaware, Sam mentioned it over again, talking about Hero Sports podcast briefly. While you're listening to podcasts, this is a great one, but also FCS football talk. I had fun with joining that the other day. Sam Herder mentioned it. Delaware, among remaining CAA football schools, really is the one that you can kind of point to that maybe mirrors the way James Madison invested in and commits to football. So, Delaware is a school that will kind of came up. It comes up in discussions and rumors. I don't mean like internally Delaware's had those talks with other conferences at the FBS level just yet, but Delaware is kind of now the school that kind of looms over the CA. And there's what are they going to do? Stony Brook location is really great, and Stony Brook is committed as well. In different, maybe some slightly different ways than how Delaware approaches things. So Stony Brook, I think, is the school that you look at and say, is it a flight risk to the CAA? William and Mary has been always brought up as a flight risk when you talk about the Patriot League, and does William and Mary and the Patriot League make sense? That's a whole other podcast. I know, Omar. Yeah, you know about that. So it's really interesting to look at the various different schools. Villanova's in the Big East for non-football sports, and who knows what the Big East does and looks like if UConn leaves the Big East in non-football sports. So good grief. It's just this number of places you can turn to speculate about the CAA, or at least give it consideration. Like, hey, that's not outrageous. Think about, what if this happens? The number of what ifs with the conference is vast, and you've made that point much more succinctly than I can. But it rings true, and it'll make it an interesting 2020s decade for the conference.
Absolutely. I mean, because when I see the I guess it's kind of a moot point now, but when I see the CAA, I see like the whack of the 1990s with 16 teams, lacking identity, kind of just adding schools haphazardly. But again, like we have a 16 team conference. We're gonna have two 16 team conferences in the FBS. So it's like it's a moot point now. It's like not the number, but maybe it's the identity that was the issue with the whack. So we'll see. I'm certainly I hope that those listening, because I assume that, you know, a lot of Delaware fans, some CAA fans are listening to this. I'm not rooting for the conference to fail. I'm just giving my opinion on the viability of the future of the conference. I think the conference is great. I grew up in Massachusetts. I would watch games on like the local like Nesson or Fox Sports Network. Back when Scott Graham would call, I guess, weekly weekly a CAA game. So it's like, I even
Nostalgia
remember
overload. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember when Hofstra was in the conference too, and well, I mean,
Mhm.
they are still, but played football, so
Right.
not rooting for the conference to fail, but just giving my thoughts on it. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah, oh yeah. There's no hating here to the point of rooting for their downfall. We're not praying on anybody's downfall
oh
on
yeah,
the hardware
never.
pod, but we're definitely like having an honest conversation. It feels like one that's come up before, right? But really since 2020, and you really knew James Madison's level of, I mean, discontent is one way to put it, or JMU's at least not afraid at that time. They weren't necessarily afraid to make it known, hey, like JMU might have been a school that explored playing football in the fall of 2022. Like that was one of those points of friction too, like how schools approached the pandemic academic year, or at least the height of the COVID pandemic when it came to football. JMU wanted a conference championship game in the spring between the two division winners in the format in the league that season. They didn't get it, didn't get the opportunity to play a league championship game. So yeah, as that pandemic era onset and that became our reality, and it became more and more clear about JMU's eyes toward the door if a chance could come in the Texas Oklahoma era of movement. It really did start to make everybody's wheels turn about what is the CAA's path forward, because it reminded us or exposed those possible, those room for cracks you can get when you do have such a diversity of schools with primary sport membership for those football only places in the CAA, and different priorities with the schools as a whole body.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, whether it be the Southland or, the I guess the Southland or the WAC, you can get into all kinds of things with in terms of 20, like all the things that the pandemic caused in terms of discontentment. Because I know Sam Houston State was like a huge, I guess yeah, Sam Houston State, yeah, was a big like kind of discontented figure, in the Southland, during the pandemic. So we'll definitely see for sure. But that's all I got right now, Dan. Thanks again for coming on. Do you have anything you want to plug one last time before we close this podcast?
Oh no, I appreciate the opportunity to do that. I'll take full advantage. Omar, I appreciate it. First, I would tell folks keep hanging in there. Omar's doing great work. Shout out to you. I enjoyed listening. I'm getting into way too many different podcasts over the course of the summer. I'm falling asleep to them, or I'm staying up late, getting my dose of college sports content. But you're doing great work. But
Thank you.
over on my end, I would say stay tuned to herosports.com. Looking forward to contributing more content to the site over the course of the summer, doing some feature work throughout June, writing some different feature stories. In July, we'll continue the features to an extent, and then also get into the media days. And I'm looking forward to, I guess, what I'm anticipating are going to be a series of more virtual media days. But it's been fun to get to know coaches through Zoom, update on them in the summers. And then in August, herosports.com will have our comprehensive conference by conference league previews for throughout the FCS. So you can get an idea of what's going on across the country heading into fall camp. Sam and I will continue to collaborate on that. So that's the biggest thing. That's your primer on summer content over at the site. I appreciate it, Omar. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. The pleasure is always mine, Dan. Always glad to have you on. And yeah, like you're also doing great stuff too with Hero Sports as well. I mean, you guys come up with like such a plethora of content, honestly, every single day. I don't know how you guys keep it going. I get tired just making like one or two pieces a day. So I love reading your stuff, and just you guys have a great team of writers for almost every conference. I mean, even the undercovered ones, you guys make your way out to cover, the Pioneer League and what the NEC and whatnot. So I really do appreciate the work of Hero Sports. But yeah, thanks again for coming on, Dan. And until next time, everyone, peace, love, and soul.